Welcome everybody to the Contrarian Daily. My name is Jake Julius and I'm joined by Chris Jong. And today we're going to be talking about Ukraine and Russia a little bit and doing some updates on where we're at with that and some broader analysis and discussion around that topic, but also talking about some of the things that are going on our own shores. It's important not to lose sight of that and the tyranny that's actually happening on our own shores. And what's happening in Eastern Europe can provide a great distraction, but I think that it's important to also hone in on what's going on over here. And a big new revelation today in that Woolworths has announced that they're going to be sacking all of their unvaccinated staff. So we've got a great article about that, and it's going to be a good one. So how are you, Chris?
Yep, very, very well, mate, as well as it could be on this Monday, 28th of February. And yeah, look, I just want to echo those sentiments as well. Like, there's obviously a lot going on over in the Ukraine right now with the Russian invasion. However, we do still have a lot of tyranny that is marching onwards here in Australia, specifically this about the Woolworths decision as well, which we'll cover as well during this episode.
Yeah, so first of all, I think that we should maybe provide a few updates on what's going on in Eastern Europe at the moment, in Ukraine with the conflict over there. And perhaps we'll start with you on that one, Chris.
Yeah, mate, I'll just cue up these, let me just unplug these headphones and cue up some footage to see what's going on over there. There's been plenty happening. And again, guys, just make sure you go check out these guys over here, Funker 530. So what we're going to look at here first is a Russian cruise missile hitting a high-rise apartment from multiple angles, which is absolutely, it's wild to watch. It's so surreal to see this. And this is footage from around 2 days ago. This came through of the cruise missile hitting the high-rise, which again is just mind-boggling. Now, this one here came out, I believe, yesterday. This is actually footage of Ukraine troops knocking out what's called a Tiger M convoy. So Tigers, from what I can understand anyway, are like an infantry fighting vehicle. So they basically, it's like a souped-up four-wheel drive, essentially, with a big machine gun on top, and we can watch the Ukrainian guys engage. So you'll see the burnt-out wrecks of the Tigers on the left-hand side there, and the Ukrainian soldiers all wearing the yellow armbands to identify themselves, firing what looks like I think it's an RPG. Not that I'm a military expert. But these guys, the fighting is definitely very, very real, and from all the footage and the indications we're getting is that the Russian attack is not going as quickly as they want to. It's been actually slowed down quite a lot. They've been taking a lot of casualties as well. There's been reports of two of the, I think it's the transport aircraft, the IL somethings being shot down, which if they have a full complement, that's between 100 to 150 Russian soldiers per plane that would have been taken out, which is, it's not nothing.
So you think that would have been casualties in the hundreds for Russia?
Yeah, those two planes being shot down from what again, this is from the Funker 530 and also S2 Underground. They reported that if those two planes were shot down because they were taking part in paratrooper activities, that would be between 100 to 150 per plane. So that's quite a lot. Again, it's not a huge amount when it comes to the Russian army overall, but it's definitely going to be leaving some marks, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said before we went on air, Chris, that there's no winners in war, and that's the lives of, most likely a few hundred young men that have just lost their lives. You don't know whose son that is, whose husband that is. It's just devastating stuff, and it seems just so unnecessary.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And look, we can actually get some footage of Russian troops being interrogated. If you want to get into more of the I guess the humanness of war, because they're not bad. They're just basically being asked all these different questions. And we can see the footage from that as well. This here was I think it's as it's saying here, the night before the main attack in either Sumy or Kiev. This is basically a trumpet playing the Ukrainian national anthem, and I thought this was very, very chilling to hear. And then hearing at the end there, I'm trying to find what the translation is. I think it's like "Long live Ukraine" or something along those lines there at the very end. That's
it was incredibly chilling.
Yeah, 100%. And this last one here we'll look at before we look at some other things here is this is what they're calling a Giga Chad Ukrainian soldier. He's doing a bit of a psyop here. This guy here, I watched this video, I was like, man, we are so fortunate to have people like this in our world. Just for those of you who are listening to this on the podcast, unfortunately, we'll have to come and watch the video to see the translation. So if you are listening to this audio only and you want to see what this guy's saying, come along and watch it on YouTube, Rumble, or Facebook.
Запишу по-русски, чтобы было, блядь, понятнее. Шо, ребята, как дела? Шо, тиха украинская ночь, да, как говорил великий украинский писатель Гоголь? Все ли у вас хорошо, ребятки? Нравятся ли вам наши байрактары? Как вы думаете, что это над вами сейчас летает? Как вы думаете, что это шуршит в кустах, пацаны? Какие у вас есть мысли по этому поводу? Что бы это могло быть, блядь? Ребятки, вам пиздец. Вы сейчас остановились. У нас все хорошо. Мы подтягиваем резервы. У нас есть авиация. У нас есть танки. У нас есть все. Вам жопа, парни. Давайте так. Сдавайтесь нахуй в плен. Пока есть такая возможность. Многие ваши уже выбрали этот путь. Он не самый херовый на самом деле. Мы с пленными... Возможно, это ошибка, но мы к пленным относимся довольно хорошо. Поэтому сейчас вы стали. А дальше мы начнем вас гонять. И делать мы это будем прямо сейчас. Поэтому используйте свой последний шанс.
I absolutely love that video. So for those of you who maybe didn't get all that, this is basically a Ukrainian soldier at the nighttime taunting the Russians, saying, hey, look, whatever you hear rustling in the bushes, that's probably my guys, and we're going to come and get you, basically. And again, like, just the balls on that guy there is absolutely incredible to see.
Yeah,
and there's
so much to put his face to it as well. And I mean, we have seen stranger things happen in history. I mean, you look at wars such as the 7-Day War in Israel, when Israel beat all of the surrounding countries around them and just went on the front foot and attacked. And it was an amazing victory for Israel. So we've seen stranger things happen. The Vietnam War, another one where the Americans just couldn't get the upper hand against the Vietnamese because they were on their home soil, and the Viet Cong were just so crafty. So
100%. And not just that, but the Ukrainian civilians here, again, hats off to them. They're extremely courageous. They are doing whatever they can to support their military. There's footage here of them weaving camouflage nets. There's also footage of what appears to be a civilian throwing Molotov cocktails at an armored column that's going past. And there's also footage of a group of civilians here making thousands of Molotov cocktails as well. These guys are not giving up. They're not giving in. And again, you just can't help but admire them. But then again, on the other side of things too, you definitely got to feel for the Russian soldiers on the ground, everyone on the ground essentially, because again, my position in this is it's the people that suffer when the elites want to, prove a point or go to war. And I think they're the ones that we should all be angry at, essentially on all sides, because again, we know that the US isn't innocent. We know that Russia is definitely not innocent. And it's just the people on the ground. Now, I don't know if you want to look at this too, but we've got a bit of footage of the Russian Spetsnaz actually looting a store in the Ukraine, which goes to prove the point that they are actually very disorganized. There's lots of reports of them actually dropping their wounded off at Ukrainian hospitals because they don't have the aid stations set up as well. So you'll notice here in this video here that they're wearing the red armbands. So what appears to be the markings is the Z symbols on the armored vehicles indicate Russian, as well as the red armbands also indicate Russians, and the yellow armbands are indicating the Ukrainian soldiers. So this is footage of the Spetsnaz looting one of the Ukrainian markets. Again, just trying to pick up just basic supplies. And there's many reports coming out that they're actually short on ammunition. They've got no food. They've got no water. They're out of fuel. There's Russian vehicles have been left by themselves, abandoned because they run out of fuel. Also, individual Russian armored vehicles just going by themselves, which is very unusual. What they're saying here in Funko 530 is the fact that what it indicates is either their column has been destroyed and they're the only ones that are left, or perhaps they're the only ones that have got petrol left there looking for supplies as well. And again, I don't know if you want to get into this one here, but this is a Russian captive speaking to his parents on the phone. I don't know if do you want to get into this one here as well?
Yeah, I'll translate it if you'd like.
Yeah, there's nothing bad in here at all. He's
Yeah.
just literally him talking to his parents, and he's got some wrapping around his head because it looks like it's been burnt, right? So some sort of wound.
Should I translate it, or do you want to just leave it?
It's up to you, mate. It's again, if you're watching an audio, you can watch the
It's a bit
subtitles.
hard because there's two people speaking, so we'll probably leave the translation out.
Okay, yeah, too easy. Just again, watch the subtitles if you're listening to the audio. Come to the video and watch the subtitles.
Я в плену, бать. В плену. Да. Не знаю, надо что-то решать, что-то делать. Она сейчас очень сильно... Да, мам. Я в плену, мам.
Говори, где ты в плену? Конкретно где ты?
Так, на Украине в плену. Сказали, едьте на Украину, мы поехали. Мам, никто ничего не знал. Я не знаю, что делать. Надо что-то решить.
Просите.
Не знаю, мам. Помощь нужна. Я не знаю.
Скажи, что с тобой тут хорошо. Я не обижаю.
Все поехали.
А где ты попал, да?
Я не знаю.
Вот ты так где сидишь-то?
Ну, на Украине местность я не знаю, мам.
А ты где ты
Нет.
Ты вообще похуй.
А?
А где?
Да я не знаю.
Говори, пусть мама обращается, блядь.
Мама, обращайтесь к командирам, позвони и кому-нибудь.
Пусть на площадях устроят.
Yeah, wow.
It really brings that humanness there. You can just imagine the thoughts and feelings running through obviously that soldier's mind, but also his parents' mind as well. And from the Ukrainians' perspective, like it's great marketing for them as well. Obviously, the fact that they've got the captives
And there's been lots of these videos as well, and it does make you question. Obviously, there will be casualties and captives on either side, but it does make you question at the same time how exactly the Russian game plan, if you will, is going at this stage, because it is definitely a lot slower than they would like. Because the slower it is, and the more drawn out it is, the more attention comes on them, and the more that the whole world starts to react. So obviously, Putin would have wanted to do this pretty quickly, short and sharp, get in, take where he needed to go. So it also makes me wonder about what the end game is for Putin and for the Russians, because is he there to take the whole of the Ukraine, or is he there to make a political statement to say, I'm not fucking around? And if you guys continue to push your borders of NATO, I will cause a war. So is he going to continue to push through, or is he going to take the eastern part of Ukraine, which is ethnically Russian, which actually would prefer to be a part of Russia, and then leave the rest of them? What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's going to go for the whole of Ukraine, only because there's a lot of attacks that are happening to the west, and then Belarus, the border there is on the northwestern part of the Ukraine, and they're pushing for Kiev. So I think it's the Danube River is what separates the eastern from the western side of the Ukraine, and that's where a lot of people prior to the war were speculating if Russia wanted to take only part of the Ukraine, they'd push in to that point, and that would be it. But the fact that it is attacking from the northwest, essentially, again, if you watch the S2 Underground updates, you'll see there's essentially fighting on all sides of the Ukraine. In the southwestern Moldova, there's fighting along the border there. In the south from the Odessa, the east, the northeast, the north, northwest, they're pushing from all different angles. And from what we're seeing as well, Putin's not very happy, obviously, with the progress. They've committed about a third of their troops that are around the border. So they haven't committed their full force here yet, obviously. But apparently one of the high-level military generals has actually resigned, and another one's been found who has ended himself. Whether that's factually that he's ended himself or someone helped him, I don't know. But definitely Putin is not happy with the progress that we're seeing so far.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing that makes me question it as well is that we see posturing from people like Putin all the time, and I do wonder because he probably knows the implications of war with America. So is he making a statement to NATO saying, hey, look, this is what I can do. I can actually surround Ukraine from all different angles, and I can, take Kiev if I want to. Or is he actually going to do it? Because Russians have like a cyber capability that is on par with America. Russians and Americans have the biggest cyber capabilities in the world, right? So if Putin really wanted to, he could probably shut off the electricity. He could shut off the Wi-Fi in Ukraine. And you wonder why he hasn't done that yet, because if they wanted to do a swift takeover of Kiev, the best thing to do would be to, first of all, cut off the electricity and Wi-Fi so that people couldn't get messages from the rest of the world, and they could just basically deprive them of those key resources.
Yeah, it makes sense. The other thing, though, is the optics of it, though, might not be so good. There's also word where Biden actually gave China all their intel on Russia prior to the invasion here. And then China, being no friend of the USA, has passed it on to Russia. And so what might be happening is maybe Putin knows what Biden will and won't do and how far he can go, and is probably going to push it all the way up to that point as well.
I did hear that as well, and I don't know what they're thinking giving intel to China, because it's clearly they're in bed with the Russians.
It's insanity. Yeah, it's insanity.
I mean, they came together during the Winter Olympics, and they basically said, just in the calm before the storm, on the eve of this invasion, they came together and said, "Hey, look, we're allies now. So we believe that Taiwan is a part of China and that Ukraine is a part of Russia." So I don't know what would have been going through their minds to give any sort of intel to China.
Yeah, well, this is where you can get, like, the conspiratorial mind can start running.
Well, I mean, in Ukraine, you currently have international broadcasts still being shown. So the longer this takes for Putin and for Russia, the worse it is. I mean, there's no doubt that if they wanted to, Russians, they could just rubble these cities like they did in Chechnya in 2000, or like they did in Syria with brutal carpet bombings. So there is that possibility. So the reluctance to use those cyber capabilities and to just use heavy-handed military tactics like carpet bombing makes me think that perhaps the end game may not be to actually annex Ukraine.
I don't know about that. I think definitely if he was to be leveling cities with carpet bombing, that would trigger a lot of a much higher international response, I think. So I think what he's trying to do here, and also, again, you'll see this with the escalation of force as well. So I think what he's trying to do here is trying to take the Ukraine with the minimal casualties to the civilian population, because I know at the very, very beginning, they're actually trying to do what they could to try to prevent civilian casualties. And there's even footage here, again, we can go to, where civilians literally just stood in front of the armored cars and they just turned around, or the armored vehicles, and the vehicles turned around. Now, though, in the last 24 hours, there's footage where the civilians stood in front of the armored vehicles, and instead of turning around, they started shooting at their feet and over their heads as warning shots,
Right.
And they just drove on. So I think the cyber part of it, I don't know why he's not using that, because that'd be a lot less of a bad thing to look at from an outside side of things, but definitely any sort of excessive military force. I think it's one thing to bomb the heck out of Syria and things like that, and another one to do the same in the Ukraine, which I think would be, again, as we were saying prior to the show as well, it's very, very different just culturally. There's a lot of people who know people from the Ukraine and also Russia and these sorts of areas, whereas not so much from Syria. So I think if he was to go ahead and be excessive with the military force in the Ukraine, that would trigger a much higher and heavier international response. And I think he doesn't really want that, obviously.
I do tend to, I mean, I'm no expert on this, obviously. We're not experts on this, but I do tend to question the mainstream narrative a lot. When I see like heavily anti-Russia and heavily pro-Ukraine, especially in the American mainstream media, the CNNs and what have you, it does make me want to question it a little bit more. And I think that in terms of Ukraine, we can get the video up of Tulsi Gabbard speaking. Tulsi put it really, really well, that Ukraine are being hailed in the media as some little utopian democracy, perfect democracy. And it's just not, that's just not the case. And I think you can play the video because Tulsi Gabbard sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
Going to hear on the mainstream media. What you do hear is warmongers arguing that we must protect Ukraine because it is a quote unquote democracy. But they're lying. Ukraine isn't actually a democracy. For example, to hold on to power, Ukraine's president shut down the 3 TV stations that were openly criticizing him and his policies, imprisoned the head of the opposition political party that had come in second place in their elections, and went and arrested and jailed that party's leaders. This is exactly what Putin has been accused of doing. But Ukraine did this all with the support of the United States.
And I think that's a really good point. And it's something that you have to look at, because Ukraine and the United States have a pretty good relationship. And I mentioned this a few episodes ago, in that Hunter Biden was on the board of a few Ukrainian companies getting a lot of unearned money in unearned positions. You also had the 2014 election in Ukraine, whereby America actually funded the ousting of that government, and they armed Ukraine, and they placed a government that, look, Putin's reasoning for going into Ukraine right now is the denazification of Ukraine. And, I don't know the ins and outs and the finer details, but I have heard from some sources that I do trust that the 2014 election was funded by America. America armed Ukraine, and there were neo-Nazis involved in that government. So it's an interesting story once you go a little bit deeper into it. And you do wonder, from Russia's perspective, and obviously Russia are in the wrong here because they are the ones who are waging war. But from Russia's perspective, NATO is something that is designed is designed to go against Russia. It's fundamentally to combat Russia as a country and their ambitions and their intentions. So obviously the Russians don't want the expansion of NATO, and that's all it's ever done since its inception, is just expand and expand. And I'm absolutely not giving any credence to Putin at all right now. But what I am saying is that instead of just pushing the limits and pushing the limits and pushing the limits until an inevitable war happens, perhaps diplomacy would have been the best option here. And perhaps communication between the countries would have been the best option here. And we had that a little bit with Trump, I felt like Trump had a better relationship with Putin. And now that Biden's in office, and it's really gone to shit. So
yeah, I agree 100%. There's a lot to say with what you were just saying there as well. NATO was actually formed to counter the Soviet Union. So there's arguments for, when the Soviet Union collapsed, that NATO should have at least wound down and wrapped up as well, which is, again, it didn't do. And as I said, it's been continuing to expand and expand and expand. And we also have to remember that the same media that's telling us all this stuff about Russia right now is the same media that's been lying to us over years about the whole coronavirus situation, all those bits and pieces there too. So definitely need to take it with a grain of salt. I think that, I think about when you start tying things together. You mentioned Trump there. I agree. I don't think this would be happening if Trump was in power. And then you start to think about why they were so, concerned about getting him out of office. Why literally all the corporations, not even putting aside any sort of election meddling type situation with the thing, which I definitely have my opinions on, and I'm sure everyone else does too. But in Time magazine post the election, there was actually an article about the fact that all the big corporations and companies in America banded together to try to push the Trump out of office as well. So regardless of that, there's been a big push. And when you start to tie things together, especially in the context of the Great Reset, it does start to make a little bit of sense, at least, because right now what we're seeing as well is a big as a distraction from everything that's been happening in the West, but also a bit of division too, where you have people on the freedom movement who are against the media now starting to fracture, I believe, anyway, in terms of those who are supporting Ukraine and those who are supporting Russia because they're so anti-media. And so when you sort of divide that sort of focus, you're going to have a bit of a, less of a pushback against the stuff that they're trying to push out here in the West.
Absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there as well, in the fact that I don't trust CNN trying to tell us, or any mainstream media in Australia for that matter, trying to tell me that they're so worried about democracy. Because what we've seen over the past few years is the systematic trampling of our human rights in so many different departments. Where were they when that was happening? Where were they when vaccine mandates? Where are they when vaccine mandates are still going on to this day? Where were they when we were locked down in our homes? Where were they when all the evidence started to come out about the adverse reactions of vaccines and the fact that these, oh God, we're going to get kicked off YouTube at this point. Where were they when the evidence started to come out and the numbers started to come out to show that lockdowns are inhumane, and that people who get the juice are still going to pass on the virus, and yet that we still have mandates. And we'll go into this much more. And furthermore to this, in terms of geopolitics as well, I don't buy it. I don't buy it at the same time, because where were they when the Kurds that have been displaced in Iraq? Where were they about the war in Yemen that's been happening, the absolutely atrocious human rights that have been going on in Yemen by a Saudi Arabian government that's being backed by the US. Where were they for that? Where were they for Afghanistan? Where were they for Iraq? The 1 million Iraqi civilians that died.
Even China.
If we're going to talk about with the Uyghur Muslims, where are they for that? So please get off your high horse, mainstream media. Do not tell me about human rights violations and trying to protect democracy in the world when they're trying to protect the democracy of a country that's not even a democracy. We are a democracy. The Western experiment is the greatest thing to ever happen to human civilization. So, where are they protecting the actual fundamentals of democracy in the world?
Yeah, just the comment came out from Karen as well that ScoMo needs to worry about what's happening in his own backyard instead of commenting on what Russia's doing. I agree 100%. And I think also ScoMo was saying that, Australia will always stand up for freedom and rights and things like that. What about the rights of its own citizens, as they've just been saying? I heard Dennis Prager, I think it was, say that democracy does not equal freedom. And that is a big thing, because we're raised to think that democracy is awesome and incredible and it's the best operating system we have as a society. However, you have the situation right now where the quote unquote masses are voting for not freedom, right? Because of all the fear and all the media lies and manipulation. They've been manipulated into voting for I guess all these lockdowns and the mandates and stuff. And so, I think they're probably genuine in saying that they want to protect their democracy, but it's not the same democracy that we're all thinking is what's actually in place. Because again, we think of democracy as freedom and fairness and all those bits and pieces there, but it's definitely not the reality that we're living in right now. And again, that's just proof in the pudding is the whole Woolworths situation right now as well, which I might actually just pull that up now.
Just before we move on, Chris, I just want to say that I think that Dave Smith is a guy that everyone can kind of listen to. If you guys want to go towards somebody who does pretty regular podcasts, he's a libertarian from the US. His name's Dave Smith. He's got a podcast called Part of the Problem, and he's a really great one to go and listen to. And I've been listening to him a lot. And basically, the contention of some of these more alternative sources, and it makes you realize that when you watch the mainstream media, you might be sucked into thinking that the West has to do something, that America has to do something. And whilst we probably do have to do something, we have to think, and cooler heads have to prevail before we go to war with a country where collectively we have 90% of the world's nuclear arms at our disposal. This is civilization ending stuff that we're talking about here. So,
well, it has the potential for sure. And Karen just had the comment there as well that not much hope when he, being ScoMo, calls Australian citizens as sheep. And I would agree, but also I'd probably argue that he's right in calling sheep, just looking at the response from most people. And it's incredibly disappointing for me to say that. I thought we weren't a country of sheep, but the vast majority of people, as we've seen, have been at least for or not standing against mandates. The freedom movement has it's come from very, very small roots and it's growing for sure, but it's still a minority compared to most people in Australia here too. So did you want to actually get the Candace video up as well at all before we go to the Woolworths one, or did you want
to? We may as well. I mean, I think it's just obviously a pretty hilarious indictment on who is leading the charge in the United States. And you never really know who's leading the charge in the States, but I think that the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden partnership is truly a disaster. I mean, they never even liked each other. You look at the debates that they had before Biden got in, when they were trying to get the what was it called, the primaries, when they were trying to become the nominee, and Kamala Harris is blatantly calling him a racist and just the most insulting things, and now they're supposed to be buddy, and I just can't think of a person that I can't think of a worse person to have at the helm than somebody like Kamala Harris in this situation. Her performance at the border, with the whole border crisis that she was supposedly put in charge of, was just absolutely terrible. She was nowhere to be seen.
She didn't get a single vote in that whole nominee race either. She was the first one out.
Her approval ratings are shockingly low, and they think that they can play the woke identity politics game because she's a woman of color, that they'll win the woke crowd. But I think that history is starting to show more and more that that's not what people are looking for. People want confidence and merit.
They do. Well, we need it as well. Let's pull up this Candace Owen video, mate, and then get.
As a Jack tweet, and I thought he was being funny. Reporter, will sanctions deter Putin? Allegedly from Jack. I don't know if we can trust him, but he says that she says, quote, within the context then of the fact that that window is still opening, although it is absolutely narrowing, but within the context of a diplomatic path still being open. Now, he says actual quote, I don't believe it is. Let's cut to some footage to see if that's what she really said.
And within the context then of the fact that that window is still although it is absolutely narrowing, but within the context of a diplomatic path still being open, the deterrence effect, we believe, has merit.
Those are words.
Okay.
Poet of our time.
Those are a lot of words.
Yeah.
Well,
Those
what
are
can
a
you
lot
say
of
about
words.
that? No, I think, yeah, again, Karen, lovely interaction here. She, said earlier that she's a joke and he's asleep. I agree 100%.
We appreciate the comments, Karen. Thank you.
Definitely. No, it's kind of scary to think that those two are at the helm and in charge of, arguably the most powerful country or nation on earth right now. And obviously, we know that they're not the only ones in control there. The president, in all reality, can only do so much, but they're the figureheads of the free world right now. So it's terrifying.
Shall we move on to what's happening on our shores then, Chris?
Let's do that. Let me just bring up this screen again. And again, this is an article from, let me just get this one here, add to stream. There we go. This is an article from Alexandra Marshall, and she's an absolute beast when it comes to writing about this sort of stuff and keeping us informed. Now, this here makes absolutely zero sense. Essentially, Woolworths has decided that they're going to maintain their decision that they made last year to start sacking unvaccinated staff from today. I believe it is the February 28th, 28th of February. Essentially, what she's saying here is that while many countries across the world have ditched COVID health orders entirely, declaring the pandemic over and the Omicron variant comparable to the flu for most people, which is what most of us have been saying from almost the very beginning at the very least. Supermarket giant Woolworths is standing by its announcement in October 2021 to sack all unvaccinated staff by February 28, 2022. This is absolutely just mind-boggling. You look at countries like the UK, and there's a whole bunch more of them that are happening over in Europe itself that are rolling back all mandates whatsoever. New South Wales, I believe, doesn't even have any mandates right now, in terms of requiring vaccines to enter locations and premises. Yet Woolworths is going to maintain its decision to fire anyone who's not vaccinated. And there are a few details to this. One of them is the fact that if someone wants to get the Novavax vaccine, which has recently been approved apparently by the government here, they have until, I think it's in the article here, March. Where is it? They have until March. They have it until sometime in March, right, to get this Novavax vaccine, which has only just been approved, right? And again, none of these things have been, run for long-term periods of time. Unless they're going to get that, they are going to be sacked, essentially, which is absolutely disgraceful. And again, the science has shown for the vast majority of people, COVID is not that big of an issue, right? And by all means, if you feel like you're at risk, by all means, go get the shot, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself. However, mandating the workers of Woolworths, who, might I also add, Woolworths is what's classified as an essential business, right? Which means that they serve unvaccinated patrons. So why can unvaccinated customers, of which, I am an unvaccinated person, I do go to Woolworths or Coles, whatever, we can go through the store and purchase all we want. Yet their staff cannot work if they are unvaccinated. That is absolutely disgusting. And again, ScoMo doing nothing, nowhere to be seen for this. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Jake.
Well, I mean, that's just the way that ScoMo is. I think we've realised that by now, that he's not a strong man, he's not a brave man, and he's not a man of principle and character. And I wish I didn't have to say that about a Liberal Prime Minister of Australia, but that's just the way it is. And ScoMo's not about to stand up, and he's not a man who is fundamentally a man of character and values. And he should be, because he is Christian, and he is when he was elected, he was probably considered somebody who was a Christian, a liberal, a conservative, and somebody who was going to stand up for those values. But he's done no such thing during this pandemic. So it's really disgraceful. And obviously, it's Woolworths. It's a political move. it's got nothing to do with health. And I don't even have to say that. And I feel stupid saying that because everyone knows this by now. But it's so bleedingly obvious right now that this is just purely political by these corporations. And then the interesting part is what happens when you draw a straight line past the top of the Woolworths food chain. No pun intended there, but at the top of the food chain in Woolworths, who are they? What connections do they have? What big corporate mergers are going on there? And where can you trace that to?
100%. And then, this sort of fits into the whole bigger Great Reset narrative that's been going on out there. And one of the things I want to bring in is the ESG score. And this is mainly affecting, I think, large corporations, of which Woolworths is one. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is driving them in some way, shape, or form. And essentially what this ESG score is going to be is it's going to be a social credit score, beginning with large corporations and their suppliers and their companies, but then ultimately ending up with individuals like us, determining whether we can actually buy the food, buy any sort of food, get any loans, and essentially live our lives. That ESG score, in combination with the it's the central bank digital currency, I believe will be Freedom's undoing if it's allowed to come into play and come into practice, because the central bank digital currency will actually be programmable. And it's what that basically means is that they can say what you can and can't spend that money on. So if you've spoken out against the government or you've done something they do not like, and this is also something there's two things that can determine what they do and don't like. One is the government and the other is the employer. And so the reason why they got the employer in there is because of the ESG score. So again, we're going to do another video breaking this down in a lot more detail and depth, but in a short summary is part of the ESG requirements that these large investment firms and I guess governments are going to have is that employees conduct a certain amount of time of volunteering, right? So then the employer will then have to go to the staff member and say, look, we need you to volunteer at this particular charity on Saturday. We don't care whether you like it or not. If you're not going to do that, we're going to have to get rid of you. And so then if the employee does not do that, the fact that the employer and the government has control over the digital currency, that will then affect what you can and can't buy and go against your score. And this is truly terrifying. Like we're talking about it here just in general conversation, but it is truly terrifying. I'm reading the Great Reset book right now with by Klaus Schwab and making a whole bunch of different notes in there for a breakdown of it all. And if you read these books, don't even take any of our words for it. Go read the source. Go find go to the World Economic Forum. Go to what else is there? Read the books, The Great Reset and The Great Narrative. Read all these bits and pieces and look at the websites of the governments out there. You'll see this is all coming into place. If this is allowed to happen, I think we can say goodbye to freedom. And again, everything that's happening over in the Ukraine and Russia right now will be the least of our issues.
Well, I mean, in the eyes of the mainstream media, it'll be the biggest of our issues. But that's what Orwell sort of prophesized, isn't it? We're always at war.
Correct.
Always at war, and war is always a distraction, and people sort of don't understand the tyranny that's going on in their own shores. And the digital identity bill is another one that's going to tie into all of this as well. I posted on Contrarian Daily Instagram a great video of Russell Brand breaking down the propaganda adverts that is digital identity bill.
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic. And he's been a real good voice for freedom. I'm just seeing Karen's asking in here about where are the unions and why aren't people going to Fair Work Australia? I ask 100%. But again, I think Fair Work Australia has been very, very quiet and is not doing a single thing, which is absolutely terrifying.
And then the unions have their own sort of nefarious ties as well. So
correct. Let me just try to find the part in here as well about Fair Work Australia. Which is just absolutely disgusting. Alexandra, she writes about it in here. I can't find it as of yet. But essentially, they're not doing anything. And especially with the freezing the bank accounts in Canada as well, it is absolutely terrifying, all this sort of stuff that's happening and going to continue to happen as well.
It's just what we can pretty comfortably call neo-fascism. It's the merging between governments and corporations. And then you can see that if you can bring into law that you can freeze people's bank accounts, so the governments and the banks and the massive corporations are working hand in hand like that, then that is what the modern day incarnation of fascism has become.
It is. And also, like, if you think back to 1984, the book, right? In that book, there's always perpetual war. There's the three main areas in the world. I think it was like Eurasia, there's like
Oceania.
Oceania, that's one. And the third one, I can't remember whatever the third one was, but they were always at war with each other.
East Asia.
East Asia, there you go. They were always at war. And that's exactly what we're looking at here as well in terms of perpetual war. And yeah, it's terrifying. Another thing, too, that's interesting is looking at the evolution of warfare. We'll do a deeper dive of this as well, but it just in the high level of it. Back in the day, warfare used to be a lot more violent in terms of military action, but also a lot more restricted to just literally being towards the soldiers. So, if you look at the American Civil War, at the very, very beginning in the first battle, the civilians were up on the hill having a picnic, watching the battle, and there was very strict rules in terms of what you could and couldn't do to civilians. So, for the most part, soldiers wouldn't engage civilians unless they're ransacking the town post a victory. As we've moved on and progressed, I guess the scale has gone away from military violence and towards engaging the civilian population in warfare, but in terms of propaganda. So you look at obviously World War II, World War I, World War II, where the population was generally involved more, but then the watershed moment was Vietnam. Vietnam was won because the USA lost the will of the population and the people, and the Vietnamese or the North Vietnamese recognized that if they can break the will of the American people, they would lose the support for the war. So they lost militarily. They lost 10-1 or way more than 10-1 in terms of the soldiers, but they won the war because they were able to engage the civilian population. And that's continued on as well. You look at places like Iraq and Syria, Afghanistan, etc. Militarily, those places have lost, but the reason why they've technically, I guess you would say, quote unquote, won is because they've lost the will of the people. And what we need to recognize today, we are at the point in time where the military violence that's going to go on is going to be a lot less typically, but we are all engaged in warfare, and it's from propaganda from our own governments and also the other governments. It's the civilians that are at war now, rather than being uniquely the soldiers. And again, we will do a deeper dive in this and show the receipts of this all, but we're all in a situation now where we can't just go, oh, the war's over there and we can't, we're not a part of it. We are a part of it now because we are the civilian population. We are getting marketed to, and all the propaganda from all sides, from the Russians, the Americans, Australia, from all over the place. And we need to keep our head on the swivel as civilians, and also keep well informed. And that's what's part of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to keep everyone well informed and so they can take action for their own benefit. But again, it's something that we need to be considerate of, is the fact that we are at war in terms of psychological warfare and the propaganda warfare, and the military action will become less and less over time. I don't know if you have any thoughts around that, Jake.
Could not have said it better myself. We're absolutely not sitting on the hill having a picnic watching at the moment. And I think that people need to understand exactly what you just said, which is what modern day warfare looks like, and what fascism looks like this day and age, and what communism looks like. What you were describing before and what we just said is that's what neo-fascism looks like. What does communism look like today? Look at the World Economic Forum. Go and look at the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab, and I'm sure that there would be people who have many people who have some sort of a lineage with actual communism within those groups. So it's important to understand what it looks like. It's not gulags and concentration camps, and it's not massive military parades these days. In the age of information, in the age of technology, these isms have moved on and they've become something more modern,
more sophisticated. And it's, again, it doesn't look good to put people in gulags and things like that now. And why should you have to? If you can just enslave them to their own, you keep them in lockdown, they've got the internet and all sorts of stuff, but the internet where they can only see what you want to show them. Because you look at what's happened over the last couple of years with the COVID situation and a whole bunch of other things, we're only, like, everyone that disagrees or had disagreed with the narrative were either shouted down or labeled or simply censored. So we're definitely moving towards a situation where it will be more peaceful. It's kind of like Brave New World as well. I think it's a bit of a merger between 1984 and Brave New World, and also Fahrenheit 411 or 911. 9/11, that's the one where we're only going to have access to certain information. So in Fahrenheit 9/11, all the books were burnt. You couldn't have books.
Fahrenheit 9/11. I thought that was a Michael Moore documentary.
No, there's a movie and also a book, I believe, called Fahrenheit something, and it's basically it's about the fact that in the future, all books are banned, right? And they burn them all. If you get caught with books, you get enslaved, or you go to jail, you get killed, and that's the stuff books burnt. Then you got 1984, when there's no history, right? The history is constantly being rewritten, and all those bits and pieces. But then also you have Brave New World, where people live that good of a life and a comfortable life, where there's no need for them to take action. And they also have that drug called Soma, which whenever you feel uncomfortable or anxious, you just take this drug called Soma and you feel normal again. And again, you look at Big Pharma and all the antidepressants that have been going on out there that's skyrocketed through.
It's such a good point. And also with Brave New World, you've got the hypersexualization of the society as well,
100%.
which is indicative of what we've seen at the moment. And 1984 is more of a heavy-handed, like 1940s Germany-esque or Stalin-esque type government, whereas Brave New World, they tend to play on the natural inclination that people have towards hedonism, and the Soma pill is a perfect way of showing that as well. So you see a little bit of both of them for sure. And I actually don't know which one you see more of. I think it's so that you see a lot of both of them.
Well, it's kind of like carrot and stick. I think you'll see the stick when they need to use that more, and you'll see the carrot when they need to use that more as well. Regardless, though, we are moving towards an authoritarian future where freedom, privacy, all those things are going to be lost. And that's definitely not a good thing. I don't know if do you have anything else you want to go over right now, Jake? We might go to look at some more footage from Russia as well, or the Ukraine conflict, unless you have anything else you want to cover.
No. I think that let's go look at some footage.
Yeah, let's have a look and see. There's again, you guys can still see my screen.
I think tomorrow maybe we'll cover the Swift bank and what Swift is, and we'll go through that in a bit of detail in tomorrow's episode.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah, very, very good idea, because that's a big deal, those sanctions. And essentially, I think also the European Union, they've also banned all flights from Russia, I believe. Is that right? So there's no flights out of Russia over the European Union, I believe.
Right. Yeah, well, let's cover that in tomorrow's episode, all the sanctions.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let's have a look at a couple more of these, and then we'll wrap up today's episode. Let me just see. What do you think is a good one to look at? If there's anything that's sticking out to you there, mate. This one,
no, I haven't seen any of them.
Yeah, so this one here is a Russian patrol being ambushed. We'll look at a civilian removing a landmine, just like he's going for a walk in the park. Maybe also this insurgency thing in terms of the Molotov cocktail, and then that might do for now, actually, I think. So what we're looking at here, or what we're going to watch in this video, is a dismounted patrol that's ambushed in Kharkiv, as per the video title. What you'll notice, what these vehicles are, these are those Tigers that were destroyed. They're probably not the same Tigers, but they're the same vehicle that were destroyed in the column earlier that we saw at the beginning of the video. And you'll see there's obviously the vehicles and the infantry. And when they get fired upon, the vehicles will shoot back with the machine guns, and the infantry will disperse, and you'll see what happens. And we have to get through this ad.
We did so well until then.
Yeah, I know. I know this does go for a little while. I might just forward it here.
So the Russians are firing at the Ukrainian.
No, so that column is a Russian column, and the Ukrainians are shooting at the Russians in the column there. And this is them backing it up afterwards as well. So you would have noticed there in the last few seconds here, one of the soldiers shoots a rocket at one of the houses. So it indicates that the Ukrainians had let the Russians come through their lines and then engage them, which makes sense from what you see. If you watch in the middle of the screen, you'll see them fire there, boom.
Right.
Yeah, and this is obviously the Russian column backing up. You can just imagine how difficult it'll be fighting house to house like this and street to street. This is a civilian removing a landmine. And so we won't go too long on this one, but he just walks off and puts it in the bushes.
Far out. I mean, we've got the only in Australia videos, but do we have it only in Ukraine?
Yeah.
It should be a new subcategory.
This one definitely needs to be up there for sure.
Yeah.
So he just basically goes and takes
a cigarette as well.
That's right, exactly. Zero F's given. Sure. And this one here, this is footage of what appears to be civilians throwing a Molotov cocktail at one of the Russian columns. You'll see the column. You'll see the civilian on the right-hand side throw the Molotov cocktail from the right to the left there, and it'll be it's towards the back end of this video. The thing that gets me just while waiting is the civilians just walking past, doing their everyday lives while the military is driving past. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think this one here, yeah, boom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good shot.
Yeah, it was. I know. Now, obviously, you know, it's just the beginnings
Okay.
of it, and you can
People
see
are
here
just going about their daily lives, and just there's this Russian trucks, military trucks, just rolling through. I guess that's how it goes, isn't it? I mean,
it is. But you know, you used to see those the dash cam footage of like in Russia, only in Russia and things like that, where the people are driving along and there's like cars, you know, with tons of people in there and trucks and tanks and stuff. It's kind of like that here too, because you'll see there's other footage here that we could get into in future episodes where the cars is driving along and all of a sudden they start getting hit by all sorts of mortar attacks and rockets. And, there's even one that we covered, I think, the other day where a taxi driver is driving towards a bridge and it just explodes in front of it. So it's
a different world out there.
It is. And that's the other thing too. We have to be very grateful for what we've got here in terms of, you know, we don't have to deal with this. But the thing that you and I talk about this a lot is the masculinity levels and things like that compared to, you know, over there versus over here. And I think even who was it? I think Avi Yemeni or Andrew Bogut, someone put up a post about it was actually the Primod. He's like, you know, the Russians and the Ukrainians, they wake up and they run around in the snow and things like that. We wake up over here
and shit. Yeah.
That's it, wrestle bears, and we're over here arguing about pronouns, and it's like you know who would win in a conflict between us.
Exactly, they have no choice but to be stoic men because they live hardened lifestyles where from the minute they're born, they're having to, you know, like fight bears and work backbreaking jobs in the snow, and they're very isolated, and like it's kind of a situation where you have to be able to be a man of the house, take care of your family. And I imagine if you're a teenage boy over in freaking Dagestan, you know, you can't be soft. It's just no. But whereas we absolutely have the chances for us to be soft over here are abundant. There's so many soft things we can do. We can sit around cuddling our pillows all day if we want to do, get in the dog.
Correct. And you know, I know, I think it's a big problem, and I know you think it's a big problem as well. And I think it's something we need to address as a country because, again, you know, if something like this was to happen on our own shores or affecting our own country, then I think there'd be a lot of people in trouble, and I think we need to get back to
just another thing, I was listening to a podcast today, and so in China, obviously being the communist country that they are, every single major corporation or company is owned by the government. So the government's got their hands in the pockets of, you know, your Alibabas and TikTok. So TikTok, the big decision makers at TikTok would be the heads of the Chinese Communist Party. So if you're TikTok and you want to manage the algorithms of people in the West, your direct enemy, well, what are you going to put on those kids' screens? You're going to put like little stupid, like little dances and all that sort of stuff.
That's right.
But then in China, with their kids and their teenagers, they're putting informational things and things about science and technology and masculinity, and they're doing self-help, whereas they're just intentionally, and this is not even a conspiracy theory, but they're just intentionally dumbing down the kids of the West. So
correct. And
this is the age of information, and this is what warfare looks like nowadays. It's a war on the minds of our kids.
Yep, of the civilian population, which again, we'll look at the evolution of warfare in detail, but you're right. And they also force breaks over there in China too, where in terms of on TikTok, after every 5 minutes, you've got to take a few minute break. Not over here. They're going to let us watch all the pronoun and blue-haired, crazy, you know, dancing videos that we want to sort of dumb us down because they are preparing for Chinese domination. Again, they've stated they want to dominate the world by 2050 or 2040, I think it was.
2049, they make no bones about it.
No, and you just look, you know, the art of war. This is the thing that's so funny is that all this information is all out there. If someone wants to read the information and connect the dots, it's all there, simple to see and plain to see. But unfortunately, not many people want to do that because they're too busy watching these dancing videos on TikTok.
And there are some good ones. I follow some dancing videos. I've been guilty of it.
Do you participate in the dancing videos? That I would like to see. I think that'd be funny.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there.
No,
maybe me and you can collaborate.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, I'll make you look good.
Sounds good.
Well, look, that's about all I wanted to cover on today's episode then, mate. I don't know if you have anything else you want to do before we wrap up.
No, that's it. But thank you guys for listening, and make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening, YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, Facebook. Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, because we're going to be doing these episodes every day during the week, and maybe some weekend episodes if there's a lot going on and a lot to be covered as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening.
All right, bye for now.